Yet another example of defunding the police going wildly sideways. In 2022, the city of Seattle, which is 750,000 people, is in a situation where they've lost another 75 police officers. There aren't enough detectives left to investigate new sexual assault cases. If you are sexually assaulted in Seattle, unless it's one of the most horrific of those crimes, you're out of luck. You might get referred to some services. You personally might get some help, but the perpetrator, they're probably going to walk because we don't have enough manpower here in Seattle to investigate those crimes. We're basically on triage. We can only investigate the worst of the worst. So if you're an adult and you don't have extenuating circumstances and somebody just assaults you, you're out of luck. That criminal is basically going to walk scot-free. How is this happening in 2022 in a city this size? Well, that's what we're talking about today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I read this kind of news. Here we go. It's a perspective you might not see on some other channels that, they don't really want to talk about this because they were wildly in love with the concept of defunding the police until they weren't. Oh, no. Yeah, this isn't a good thing. Defund the police. Oh, no. We didn't really mean defund the police. What we meant was, doesn't matter. The impact has already been made. Police have left in droves. We know the drill. But most people kind of want to sweep that under the rug. Yeah, you know what? With a little overtime, we're going to make this happen. We're all going to be good. We'll bring in officers from outside jurisdictions. Yeah, it's not really working. And hiring police in today's market, darn near impossible. Because you did the whole defund the police thing across the United States. Police were made out to be these horrible, horrible monsters. And then what happens when you call 911? Yeah, you still want those same people to come. You still want those same people to come, right? I mean, we're seeing examples of that in the gay pride parade. Yeah, police officers, you're a no-go. I mean, what are we even doing? All right, let's get into it. So got a quick video here. We'll just take a look at this. There are some interesting things that we'll talk about here. Okay.
A May 2nd internal memo between top brass within the department provided by Seattle Police states we currently have 6 positions not being actively filled due to absences and personnel shortages. And the department says that is causing the sexual assault unit to triage more heavily than normal, with cases where the suspect is in custody and cases involving children and vulnerable adults taking priority. When it comes to the sexual assault cases detectives referred to the prosecuting attorney's office, that office provided this. The graph shows the number of referrals dropping after 2020. Advocates for sexual assault survivors say they are concerned because staffing shortages mean there are cases currently waiting to be assigned to a detective. Chief Adrian Diaz says he's working to provide more resources.
I have another detective that will be deployed later on this month of June. I've also we've been across assigning cases with our domestic violence unit. So we have taken some of the sexual assault cases and given it to domestic violence detectives to investigate as well.
King County Sexual Assault Resource Center's CEO, Mary Ellen Stone, released this statement, saying in part, if we continue to believe that sexual assault victims should have the opportunity to report to law enforcement about what happened to them, we have an obligation to make it work better for those survivors who put their trust in that system.
So we've taken the police officers that we can. They're doing what they can towards the majority of the worst crimes going on. But you've only got so many police officers to handle so many crimes. And then there's a point in which you're like, okay, got to cut it off. Can't do it. No can do. Here we are. That's where we sit right now. I believe interim police chief, permanent police chief, Adrian Diaz. Who else is going to want that job? I think he's done a knock-up job given what he's been handed. I mean, he basically had one of the most targeted police departments in the United States when Chief Carmen Best basically in defiance said, yep, out of here, gone. We're not dealing with this. He took over a department that it's been battered. It's been battered. Went through the whole CHOP thing. I mean, you had a police department where the whole city just basically took a poop on it. And if you didn't say anything about it, you took a poop on it too. If you weren't like, yeah, that's not a good call. That's not a good call. Defunding the police and basically, hammering on the people that provide our public safety. And at the same time, if something goes sideways to the people that were just really rah about defunding the police, who do they call? Do they call their social workers? No, they call 911 and we send out the same police. Just a wild scenario, right? It makes no sense. And for those of us who are concerned about public safety, yeah, I'd like communities to be safe. That to me is something that's important, right? I mean, just from a real estate standpoint, you want to drive into communities where you've got kids playing out in the street because that means it's safe. Not in the street. You know what I mean? I mean, Johnny, I'll watch out for that semi coming. It might run you over. No, we don't want kids playing in the street, but playing outside, feeling comfortable, moms walking their kids, not these situations where you're like, oh, geez, yeah, is that yet another homeless person that might try and steal my purse? Don't really know. That's a lot of what Seattle in certain areas and certain neighborhoods is dealing with now. And you don't have enough cops to basically enforce the basic law. And a lot of what we've done is just well, you know what? We seem to be arresting too many of those folks for those crimes. Let's just get rid of those crimes. Let's just, I mean, that being a crime, stealing people's cars, it's a form of sharing. It's like ride sharing, but yeah, you get what I'm saying, right? It's become absurd. I mean, the level of crimes that has just kind of risen. Cars, catalytic converters. I mean, we thought catalytic converters was bad. Just the number of cars being stolen are just, yeah, it's happening. And it's not just happening in Seattle, but the cities that defunded their police that really put an emphasis on, these guys and gals are really bad. They're the ones that are being impacted the worst. So this is what we're dealing with. And people need to know. 2 years ago, protesters and members of the Seattle City Council were demanding the city defund its police force. Remember that? Defund the Seattle Police Department by 50%. Now, that's what the signs at CHOP read. That's what all the signs were walking around. People were just, they thought this is the greatest plan ever. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with this? This is genius. Defund the police. Give all the money to, community groups and stuff. And I don't have a problem with funding some of the stuff that, the police can't directly be involved with. Community efforts. Hey, great. Social workers on calls where police aren't required. All right. I'm open to that. So the police can go do the most important of stuff. But so many of these calls, you got to make a judgment call on. I don't really know what that guy's going to do. Let's bring in the police. So you've got these scenarios and yeah, here we are a couple of years later, don't have enough cops. If you get sexually assaulted, you are SOL. Yeah. That's not where you want to be as a city. I'm sorry. Sorry that happened to you, but here's a referral to some services. They can get you some help. We're doing the best we can. That's literally the response you're going to get in our fine city. But hey, come on, spend your travelers' dollars here. We want you to come in and, we want you to visit Seattle and feel comfortable. Just don't have anything bad happen to you because we're a little shy on cops right now. And 2 years later, it's clear officers haven't forgotten that we demanded to defund the police by 50%. In April, KUOW published this chart of deployable Seattle Police Department officers over time. At the end of 2019, before the death of George Floyd and the push to defund the police, the city had 1,281 such officers. Man, those were the days, right? By the end of last year, that number was down to 958 officers. Keeping in mind the 1,281 was already short of the number of police officers by probably 150 is short. We were already short in 2019, the number of officers we need based on FBI numbers of a city our size, the population, number of police officers per 1,000 population, right? By the end of last year, that number was down to 958. So and dropping. It's just like Portland. None of this is a surprise to anyone. Nearly a year ago, former Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan said, "We're on path to losing 300 officers." She also explained why it was happening. Not unexpected, losing these numbers of officers when city leaders talk about cutting the department by 50%. Now, what Mayor Jenny Durkan was talking about was our council people. Our council people. They are some nut jobs. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to handle city business. This is what you get when you do this kind of nonsense. Defunding the Seattle Police Department by 50%. Yeah, you reap what you sow, right? All right, this is what we did. Okay, here's the consequences. Oh, that's not good. You will lose employees. Jenny Durkan came right out and said, you will lose employees. Families need security. Workers, even police officers, need working conditions that support them. And they don't have them. They still don't have them. In Seattle, you'll still see Defund the Police in people's windows. All right. Well, I hope nothing bad happens to you, because if it does, you might want to change that whole thought process of defund the police. Today, Jason Rantz reports the decline in Seattle's police force continues to outpace efforts to hire new officers. If the trend continues, the city could lose another 200 officers this year. Talk about Portland fairly often. In July, Portland is set to lose another, I think it's 40 police officers that could potentially retire. I mean, these areas where defund the police was a big concept, was just that hot. Oh, this is the best thing ever. I mean, we don't need police officers. What do we need those guys for? I mean, what could we possibly do with, this many police officers? Well, we're finding out now, right? I mean, we're literally finding out in real time. And people are looking around going, oh, that's not good. And if I mention these kind of storylines, people are like, really? That's out there? Well, what do you listen? Where do you get your news? CNN? Yeah, I do. Okay. Well, there's that, right? Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. This is where we sit. So you got 200 officers by the end of this year that could leave. Now, we're always talking about potential. Maybe we'll get an influx of officers. Maybe. And maybe we'll have an 80-degree day before July in Seattle. I mean, that could happen. We're not getting a big influx of police officers anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. Will we maybe temporarily hire a bunch of, I don't know, people from some other entities, from some other law enforcement entity? I think that could be a very real probability. All right. We need to get some type of law enforcement in here. Don't care what it is. All right. Boy Scouts, National Guard. Okay. That, the most recent 4, 5, 6, and 7 groups of cadets, you guys are all going, yeah, that whole internship thing. Yeah. You're on the streets now, right now. No, I mean like right now, you guys got to go pick up your guns, go. Henceforth, you are a police officer in Seattle. Something like that. I'm just talking utter nonsense here. But at some point in time, this is probably what's going to happen, because you can't run a city on the number of police officers that we have right now. Portland can't run their city on the number of police officers they have right now. Barely functioning would be the operable word on so many different layers. Because if you're down cops, if you're down people in public safety and you move them to another division within the force, then wherever they left, they're shorthanded. Right now, sexual assault is shorthanded in Seattle. And so that means if something bad happens to you, something bad happens to your daughter, your wife, your whatever it is, your partner, your significant other, your employee, hey, you can't count on normal police resources to get you the justice that you deserve in 2022. It's wild, right? It's wild. Meanwhile, through the end of May, the city will have hired or rehired a total of 26 officers for a net decline of 49 officers so far. So we are continually dealing with a net decline. That is the bottom line. If you see situations where, we hired 26 police officers. Yeah, but you lost 49. So do 49 minus 26. No, never mind. It's so whatever minus 26 equals negative 49. That's the decline, right? So the situation was already declared. I'm a real estate guy. Math isn't my strong point. I've got office managers, that kind of stuff. Situation was already declared a stage 3 emergency last year. I podcasted that. All right, here we are in 2021. We're at stage 3, meaning all officers, including detectives, are required to respond to 911 calls. All right. So those detectives that are now being required to respond to 911 calls, or were, depending on how the situation goes, they are no longer out investigating what might have happened to you or a loved one as far as a sexual assault. They're not out there doing it. That's the way this goes. Triage. It's what we're dealing with. The decline has had other serious impacts. Last month, an NPR reported that Seattle had put all sexual assault investigations on the back burner. What? I'm sorry. What? Yeah. All sexual assault investigations on the back burner. Now, when we say that, we mean, okay, so you've got a recipe. You don't need this right now. Okay, so we're going to put it on the back burner because, it can cool off. I don't do a lot of cooking. I'm making most of this up. I am a bare bones cook. I can cook okay, but yeah, put it on the back burner. All right, we're just going to let that sit and ferment. Any kind of crime like that is, you need to be on that right away, because otherwise your chances of solving said crime, getting the perpetrators into justice, it's going to disappear. It's just going to disappear. Seattle Times confirmed that story just yesterday. And this was last week. This is a big story that came out last week. And I kind of wanted to see, a lot of times I wanted to see, all right, let's see if we can confirm that story. Let's see what some of those sources saying. And if enough big outlets carry it, then I step up, because I'm not a news guy. I'm an opinion guy. And if the news isn't accurate, and I see a lot of stories where I'm like, that's some BS, right? I call BS on that one. And then I don't read it. You know what I mean? So got to have a decent filter, because so much of this stuff is just backwards. It's just wrong. They literally can't investigate new sexual assaults because of lack of officers. The impact of this just isn't a lack of justice for the victims. We've already seen one case where an alleged sexual assault person who was released because of late paperwork went on to do the same thing to another woman. Twofer in a week. Just let them out. Boom. Not investigating. Oh, we're sorry this happened to the both of you. We will try better next time. Our numbers are down. So sorry. That's literally what you're going to get, is an apology. And, they're going to try and hook you up with people who can help you out, entities and, social services and that kind of thing. But I think what most everybody wants to see is they want to see the law enforced and they want to see justice, right? That ain't happening. Today, Police Chief Diaz has responded to the story about the lack of detectives to handle sexual assault cases. He talks about it. Hey, doing what I can, doing the best he can. Talk about a terrible job. Interim Police Chief Diaz. Just terrible, awful job. So if you're a Seattle police officer and you have an opinion, when I talk about seeing Chief Diaz doing what he's doing, and from my standpoint, it's basically stories I read and, all the information I come across. I don't have the inside scoop. And from that standpoint, I'm just kind of talking about Chief Diaz from the outside. He entered into a terrible, terrible position. And I think he's done an okay job given what he's given. I haven't really disagreed with the vast majority, but there's no way in doing his job he's going to make people happy, because it's a situation that it's a loser situation all the way around till we get, more full circle and are able to hire some more officers to make our streets safe. This is what you're working with. If the number of officers continues to decline by triple digits, at some point soon, people are not going to be able to count on police in anything but the most dire circumstances. That's not a reflection of officers who remain. It's just the reality of having too few officers on hand to deal with the level of crime the city is experiencing 24/7. In other words, what's happening to the sexual assault unit is just the start. That's my concern. And that is what I've been talking about for basically going on, I think, a year now. These numbers aren't looking good. And everybody's like, yeah, we've heard this before, Sean. All right, well, you're going to hear it again, because what's going to happen at some point? We're going to have a big tragic event. Then everybody's going to go, why didn't the police respond? Well, we don't have enough. The police did respond. This is what you get, dummy. This is literally the conversation we're going to have at some point in the very near future. And if it's not in the near future, it's in the not too distant future, because we're not going to be able to hire the number of cops we need to make these cities safe. So it's not going away. Let's just ignore it and see how it goes. All right. Well, that's kind of what we're doing now. And I think the entities that are trying to hire more police officers, they're doing what they can. They're doing what they can. But look at the city council. Well, should we give bonuses to hire new? No, we need to fund other departments. You got to do whatever it takes to hire more cops. That's what you got to do. But those same people on our city council, the ones that devoted to defund the police, are not wanting to hire more police. They don't care. They don't care what happens to you. They don't care if you or your loved one gets assaulted. They don't care. That's not their concern. And they show it by their positions on the police. So that's where we sit. Yeah. It's, I wish I had a happier podcast for you, but these are, we deal with news for reasonable people, not news for, continually happy people. Because sometimes you got to deal with the muck. Because that is what we're working on. And Seattle, I'm not saying that if you go over to Seattle and you walk around, you're going to get assaulted. I just recorded I think it was like a 2-hour walking video of my friend Dan and I. He's the one that owns a couple of bars. He got shut down during the pandemic. Dan, your bars are open. Dan, your bars are closed. Dan, you're outside of your bars. You can do a lot of people. Oh, no. You can't do that. Talked with him a bunch of times here on this podcast. We did a walk in Seattle from East Lake down to Belltown, which is kind of Lake Union, east side of Lake Union, all the way to the north end of downtown. To be honest, we only saw a couple of tents, but we were in an area that had been cleared out. So you got these areas of Seattle that are looking good, Mr. Cotta. Remember that one? Welcome back, Cotter. And probably not. That's okay if you didn't. But John Travolta was in that, and he was epic. What was that? Welcome back, Cotter. Yeah. And was that in New York? Was that in like the Bronx or something? I think it was, but John Travolta was just coming into his own, and man, he was smooth. He was like Fonzie smooth back in the day, right? So, where was I? Have no idea, but, there are areas of the city that look great. There are. But then if something bad happens to you, you got a situation going on, and, you find yourself in a situation where you've been sexually assaulted. This is one of those examples of, okay, even though we cleaned up that part of the city, these consequences are going to remain because we don't have enough police officers to basically round out all the divisions to keep our city safe. So that's where we sit. And, my second podcast today is going to be on, we defunded the police, and we wanted to move a lot of these divisions from under the police, 911 calls from police, and parking enforcement was one. And one of the people that was was basically authorized all these parking tickets, didn't have the authority to do so. This is another direct result of defund the police. So we're going to have to refund like $5 million worth of parking tickets. How about if you had your car towed and the person authorizing that tow didn't have the authority? Are we going to refund all that too? I don't know. What a mess. What a mess. But when you go down these far left activist, means of doing things, this is what you get. This is literally what you get. This is not reasonable. You're going to have to deal with it. So Seattle's going to deal with it. Most residents are just going to be like, it doesn't really bother me. I'm not planning on getting assaulted today. So whatever. I mean, that seems to be the general consensus. Well, we seem to be doing okay, so far. It'll be all right. Well, it'll be all right till it's not. And then And then I'll get to say, hey, I told you so. And that's what we'll be doing. Okay, so there's that. And I'd rather not do that. I would rather Johnny on the spot, figure out how to make the city safe, have fewer people get impacted, because that makes for happier people. And happier people, I mean, isn't that what it's all about? Doesn't feel like it right now, though, does it? No. Yeah. Anywho, thanks for being here. We'll catch up soon. We'll talk in the next one. Bye for now.